So this morning I want to go over some world events that you need to pay close attention to. Things are getting very serious and very critical very quickly. But before I get started on that, I want to go over this fellow Moscow once again. He just can't seem to stop. I did a whole video about concerning the tropes of Christianity and their lies, and it was based upon the things that this man said. So he continues, he will not stop. So I'm going to answer him yet again. I already have, actually, but I'm going to share it with you today. So he says the doctrine of Christian small c Zionism and dispensationalism is a modern-day heresy introduced by John Nelson Darby, founder of the cult-like Plymouth Brethren in the 1830s and later popularized by Cyrus Scofield, a convicted racketeer, shyster, and a fraud whose fictitious work with the Zionist Scofield Reference Bible, published by Rothschild-owned Oxford Press, was financed by secular European white Jewish Zionists. And I'm thinking to myself, what has this got to do with anything we're discussing? Is he trying to change the subject? They didn't change the words of Paul. I mean, King James Version is more guilty than Scofield and Darby. And I'm not saying that Scofield and Darby were decent fellows. I don't know who they are, and I don't really care. So he continues, it was never even known of in the church before that, nor was it had it ever been a belief held by Christians at any time in two millennia of biblical historic Christianity. I still don't know what he's talking about. This false doctrine is manifest error and idolatry which is enabling, aiding and abetting the modern illegal and fictitious nation state of Israel, small c, or small I, in its war crimes and genocide against the Palestinians, many of whom are or were before Israel murdered them actual and authentic Christians whom our Lord regards as his own. Yes, his Lord Jesus, who has nothing to do with the real Moshiach that is coming to save Israel, as Paul stated in Romans 11. But you see, Scofield and Darby had nothing to do with Romans 11 verses 25 through 28. He's ignoring the elephant in the room. It's like, here's the thing with you Christians. Romans 11 verse 26 is your kryptonite. It destroys your whole false narratives concerning Israel. A short and to the point factual statement. You can't get around it. So my answer was this. Do you realize that the name Palestine was Emperor Hadrian's attempt to wipe out the name of Judea and Israel from the earth forever, right? So when you champion Palestine over Israel, you adopt the same genocide doctrine of Hadrian and Hitler. Are you aware of this? This doctrine that you embrace is the opposite of what Paul taught in Romans 11. Are you aware that you will be held accountable in the day of judgment for every word you type or proceeds out of your mouth? In that day it will be too late to have a change of heart. Matityahu 12 verse 36. No, it's not Matthew. Matityahu has the name of Jehovah in it. Do not sloppily slur the name. In verse 12, chapter 12, verse 36, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak. So you think that the things you say are, you won't be held accountable for? You think that using Jehovah's name in a blasphemous manner or ignoring it and choosing the name of a false idol, you think that that is not going to have an accountability attached to it? He says every word, every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. 37, for by your words you shall be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned. The whole point of this video was to prove to the world, using the very words of Paul in Romans 11. And again, I'm telling each and every one of you, you Christians, you are unable to withstand the words of Paul in Romans 11, verses 25, 26, 27, and 28. These verses utterly destroy the entire Christian narrative concerning Israel. But you Christians, you insist on condemning Israel. You insist on superseding Israel, and you do so to your own destruction. So I'm telling him that concerning Romans 11, Schofield and Darby has nothing to do with it. That the church can never supersede or replace Israel. Paul also warned the Romans that if they defied his warning, that the Romans would be cut off. You, like the Romans, defied Paul's warning, so my advice to you is to prepare for the Great Tribulation. And I'm telling you, especially you Europeans, but everybody around the world, need to prepare for the Great Tribulation that is coming upon the Gentiles that I have been warning you about for years and years and years. For example, the Baltic states are preparing for the descent of the Russian army. This is on warnews247.gr. Triple defense line with 600 bunkers on the border. Static defense doctrine from NATO. And this defense doctrine from NATO is that they are to hold the line until NATO gets its forces there when Russia attacks. But there's something that they're not aware of, folks. There's something that they're not aware of, and I'm getting more and more suspicious about the goings-on politically here in the United States of America. You see, Europe has been completely dependent upon the United States of America for its protection and defense. And we're about to have an election here in the United States of America. And we all thought, including myself, that Donald Trump was done for. Now, those of you who watch my videos, you know that I not only am not a fan of Donald Trump, neither am I a fan of Joe Biden. First of all, I categorically reject all the governments of this world, all of them, because they are not the governments of Yehoshua. They don't serve Yehoshua. None of them do. So, I don't vote in the system. I don't participate in the system at all. And if they try to get me to do jury duty, I avoided jury duty a few years ago by just saying that I declined I don't want to do it because judge not that you be not judged. And they let me off. I am not a participating, I am at most a spectator. I'm watching world events. So it doesn't matter to me who wins, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. But we all understand this, that if Joe Biden wins, the United States is going to rush headlong into the war with Russia. If Donald Trump wins, he's going to sue for peace. Or he's going to maybe even pull out of NATO altogether. Because in his mind, the European countries have been sitting on their collective asses and have not been pulling their own weight defensively. And he has projected that he does not want to get in any kind of war with Russia. And as I've said before, I find it interesting how if he would win, it would kind of correspond with words that are written in Ezekiel 38. When Gog and Magog, whoever they are today, probably Russia, because Russia's allies are listed among the allies of Gog and Magog. Okay? It says right here, Adonai Jehovah says, it shall come to pass in that same time, shall things come into your mind, and you shall think an evil thought, and you shall say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are in rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls. And this is not speaking of Jerusalem. This is speaking of the northern Israel, the Golan Heights, and having neither bars nor gates, because these are the hamlet area, the open hamlets of the north. And that's exactly what the Golan Heights are. To take a spoil, to take a prey, and to turn your hand upon a desolate. Well, why would they do this? Well, they claim they're doing this to force Israel to go back to the 67 borders. You can see that the doctrine of the Russians demand Israel 67 borders. I'm not sure if this is going to be the one or not. But in order for Benjamin Netanyahu to have to put this out there. Oh, well, this is even when Barack Obama was president. Last week, U.S. President Barack Obama said that future borders negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians should be based on the territorial lines in place before Israel captured Judea, Samaria, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip in the 1967 Arab War, and that's the 67 borders. They all want Israel to go back to 67 borders. And Russia believes that it is their duty and responsibility to push Israel back to 67 borders. And maybe it will be in this particular article, I don't know. Yes, of course. There it is right there. Russia calls on Israel, Palestine for soonest direct talks. Foreign Ministry Alexei Zaltsev has underlined that Russia consistently holds a principled stance on the establishing a viable independent Palestinian states within the 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. The real reason why the Russians want this, well, there's several. Because there's a lot of Orthodox churches, as they say, in Jerusalem, and the so-called Christians, or the Christians in among the people in Gaza are typically of the Orthodox Church, which the Russians claim as theirs. So you see, folks, this is what Russia wants to force down Israel's throat. And that is the reason why, and the other reason is because there's a lot of oil in the Golan Heights, and now that Syria is a vassal state of Russia, Russia could get even more oil out of the Middle East. It says right here, to take a spoil, to turn your hand on the desolate places that are now inhabited again. They were desolate before 1945, and then they started inhabiting it again. And upon the people that are gathered out of the Gentiles, the imports from Europe, which is getting close to the majority of Israel now, I think. Maybe. Cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. Not to mention the folks that were kicked out of Iraq. Shout out to Hannah, you know, if you're listening, and her grandparents who were kicked out of Iraq with nothing but the clothes on their backs. And all the other nations round about did that too. So these people as well, not just Europe. Says Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish. Now there's a Sheba and Dedan in Saudi Arabia, and there was a Sheba and Dedan that would be in Africa now. These and the merchants of Tarshish, it kind of lends to merchants altogether. And that would put the Sheba and Dedan as the probably the Saudi Arabia as number one candidate for Sheba and Dedan. Merchants of Tarshish. Okay, so that they are capitalists, right? Capitalists in the West, because Tarshish, if you were to go and Google Tarshish, you would see that it is on the Atlantic coast of Portugal, with all the young lions, all the young nations, all the western young nations thereof shall say, have you come to take a spoil? Are you gathering your company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Therefore, So they are going to be adamantly against it. It doesn't say that anybody else is. And if you look in Ezekiel 39, you will see that when Gog and Magog and all their allies, including Iran, many others, it says, I'm going to find this. Oh yes. I will send a fire on Magog. Will Israel begin to use Jericho 2 and Jericho 3 nukes? I don't know. and also among them that dwelled carelessly in the coastlands. That's Rome. That's the Roman Empire. Now, and they shall know Jehovah. The coastlands, Roman Empire. Well, go look at a map. You'll see it right here. That's a major portion of NATO nations. So I have to ask myself a question. Is Donald Trump going to win and pull the United States out of NATO? I don't know the answer, and the reason why I asked that question is because if nukes start falling on the United States cities, that would kill, or very likely kill, half of all the Jews living in the world today. Being that most of the Jews live in the cities and not in the country. And there's a reason for that. A lot of people don't realize that the Europeans forced the Jews to live in city ghettos to keep an eye on them. And so it's been, for nearly 2,000 years, that has been the way it has been. They would not allow the Jews to farm at all. So, you see, folks, that's the reason why I am thinking and wondering what is going to happen. But you shouldn't be complacent. You should have your beans and rice ready. Now, you European, you're in trouble. You are in big trouble. There is no way to get around this. The coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea is going to have a fire sent on them, and I believe it's nuclear. So we see this. Baltic states are preparing for the descent of the Russian army triple defense line with 600 bunkers on the border. Static defense doctrine from NATO. So the Baltic states have begun the construction of the double and triple defense line on the borders with Russia and Belarus on the model of the Surovikin line in Zaporizhia. The countdown to Russia-NATO conflict in the Baltic has begun with the states of the three countries intensively preparing for the descent of the Russian army. Their purpose is to withstand the first wave of the Russian attack, to hold their defense positions until NATO reinforcements arrive. But if for some reason the United States of America is locked in a political deadlock and cannot help, or even if Trump wins and will not help the Europeans, then what? Then Russia can do about what it wants to, including invade Israel. You see, folks? Now, knowing this and knowing what is happening here in the United States, the British, they face call up: if we go to war with Russia, head of the army will tell ministers troops numbers are low, so low he will need to find more people. You know what that means: conscription. This faint-hearted generation in the United States is bad enough. But in Great Britain it is even worse. The men have been completely feminized over there. So today, the head of the British Army will call for ministers to mobilize the nation. General Sir Patrick Sanders has been outspoken on dwindling UK troop numbers. The Chief of the British Army is set to warn Brits that they could be called up to fight for the king and country in the event of war in Russia because the military is too small to handle conflict on its own. Get ready for conscription, folks. Get ready. They're going to force you. When the numbers get low, they'll throw old people in the front lines if necessary. Yes, folks, it's coming. The timing is glaring. They're trying so hard here in the United States to stop Donald Trump. I don't know how, like I said, I'm no fan of his. I'm just a spectator. They're so desperate to stop him that they voted for Haley in the primaries in New Hampshire to no avail. He won the Iowa primary, and Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire primary handily, even though several videos out of New Hampshire show that Democrat voters desperately tried to game the Republican primary to derail Trump's now inevitable capturing of the Republican nomination. And now, if you go on YouTube, you will find that the minorities in this country are now supporting Donald Trump. Now, as I have said before, Jehovah's will must be done. The salvation of Israel must occur. And if that means turning the U.S. election upside down or into chaos, or having Donald Trump elected, or whatever to make it happen, I believe now more than ever that something is going to happen here in the United States to keep the United States out of the war. I don't know for sure, but you folks in Europe, for 2,000 years, nearly 2,000 years, you have subjugated, you have pillaged, you have castigated, you have slandered, you have raped, murdered, and burned alive the Jews. Without the Jews being able to fight back. You have thousands of years of continual bloodshed that you committed against the Jews. Blood is on your land, and that blood is crying out for vengeance, and that blood is going to exact every drop of vengeance possible. Now, the United States of America is responsible for the eugenics doctrine of the Nazis. As I have said before, please, folks, I urge you to Google the horrifying American roots of Nazi eugenics. Google that and read it from top to bottom, and know that your country is far from being guilt-free. But because I believe that because there are so many Jews and so much of the lost 10 tribes of Israel here, still the minority, by the way, that in order for Jehovah's will to be done, the United States might be spared from the initial onslaught of World War III, but I'm telling you right now, will not be saved from the plagues of the two witnesses. Cannot be saved from those plagues. Because there will be 3.5 years of no rain upon the earth until their prophecy, or time for prophecy, has been finished. It's not going to stop until 3.5 years is over. 1,203 score days, as is written in Revelation 11. Cannot be stopped. So, prepare, especially you British, you French, you Jew-hating countries in Europe. Prepare for them to conscript your sons and your daughters and send them into bloody hell.